Hi, and welcome to another session of Venture and Capital. Today, I've got the founder of Planet Ark Power, Mr. Richard Romanowski. Welcome, Richard.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, I wanted to bring you on today because over the Christmas holidays, I spent a lot of time reading, looking at renewable energy, trying to understand the storage space. And look, I think at this point in time, we've been doing WI now for 12 years. I am so enthusiastic about how much energy is being focused on the renewable energy space. And you're sitting in there prime time with blue chip clients, with international response to your technology. And I thought you'd be great to have a conversation with to help investors really understand what is the opportunity, what has been the changes over the last 5 years, and what are the problems basically in this space. So let's kick off. It'd be great to give a bit of a quick introduction to you, yourself personally, and also to Planet Ark Power.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure. So I'm a very passionate entrepreneur focusing on trying to make a difference in the world. And our focus is on decarbonizing the world. We started out in creating the company 8 years ago with the focus on we need to decarbonize, but there was not the technology available for that to actually happen because we have a huge knowledge of the constraints in the distribution grid or the electricity grid. And so we set out to fix that problem, and we have.
And if you want to go through some of those problems, so let's talk about the first one I want to talk about is the actual cost of producing renewable energy. How have you seen that change over those 8 years?
It has come down drastically, of course. So now rooftop solar is, we claim, and we know it's the cheapest form of energy, and of course the cheapest form of clean energy in the world. So when you put rooftop solar on a house or on a building, you beat everything in the whole world, and that's Australia's leading the way in that way. And then you add storage to it, and it starts to actually make sense. It's very close with storage to become really a commercial game changer.
So in regards to commercial side, you've got clients such as IKEA and quite other. So just give us an example, like what is the case when they come to you and they're asking about sort of installations for themselves on their sites? They're obviously got large areas that they're looking to fill. What is the commercial case? What does that commercial case look like from what it was, 5 years ago to what is that potential now for them? How much money do they save? What does it mean for them on an energy cost basis?
Thank you, Steve. So IKEA is our flagship site. So that's in Adelaide, and it's taken us quite a long time. So as a startup, it takes a while to get to a first commercial project. And this one is big. We've gone from our demonstration project was like $500,000, and now we're going to a $10 million commercial project. So we jump really quickly, and it becomes very complex. But in the simplest terms, for IKEA in Adelaide, if they used current technology with solar, they would install about 600 kilowatts of solar on their roof. And let's say they're going to save 10% of their energy costs. With our technology, which I'll explain in a few minutes, we can actually increase that by 10 times. So they're now installing a 6 megawatt power station with us under our technology by the time we get to phase 3 with them. So that's rooftop solar, solar car park, and batteries. And then they save a ton of money, right? And most importantly, we solve something called the split incentive. So 80% of property in the world is owned by a certain person, and then there's a tenant. And then you have this fight between, when you want to upgrade the air conditioning, the landlord doesn't want to do that because he doesn't get any money for it. You don't pay any more rent for it. So that whole split incentive problem is huge. We've solved that because we've now made IKEA's owned by one of the world's largest pension funds or super funds. It's not owned by IKEA. So it's actually giving this pension fund the chance to create actually it's the start of them building $1 billion portfolio of projects that that they make money on, but they decarbonize the world. They radically speed up decarbonization of the world, because at the end of phase 3, this IKEA site will not be carbon neutral. It will actually be carbon negative.
Interesting. Now, let's spend some time doing a deep dive on this, because what you just highlighted there effectively has the way to change, I suppose, the way in which energy is sold, the way in which it's produced. Now, also that comes down to your technology, but I think it's important for investors to understand what is the actual problem with renewable energy, because what fascinated me about you, and when I spoke to some investors in Asia about what you're doing, they highlighted the problem you were solving. And I didn't know there was a problem with directional issues when it comes to energy, where it can be sent in one direction, but it was difficult relating to storage and also for potentially for energy that's not used for it to come. So just give us a bit of an understanding of that specific problem when it comes to renewable energy, because to me, in solving that problem, if you think about it, you can change the entire energy infrastructure. So go for it.
Thank you. And that's a brilliant question. And yes, we are solving the fundamentals of the energy infrastructure on a global scale. So when I was in Silicon Valley with one of the investment firms, they said, wow, you've actually solved an unsolvable electricity engineering problem. That is, the grid is a one-way grid. And everybody goes, yeah, what do you mean it's a one-way grid? You know, I put solar on my roof and I send energy backwards. Yeah, but that's just like it's like a sprinkler. It's a tiny bit of energy going backwards, right? So the grid is so huge. The amount of energy going one way is massive. So it's like a tidal wave. And so when the amount of rooftop solar we're putting in now is really like just a whole bunch of sprinklers going backwards. So I'm just using, I'm not.
Yeah, go for it.
And so trying to keep it simple or give graphically, and that's the reality. But all of a sudden, we spent 8 years and about $16 million US of our investment money personally from the two co-founders and other investors to get this far, so that the tidal wave, actually complete 100% energy, can go backwards 2 ways. So we've turned the grid from electricity grid from a one-way grid into two-way grid, and that just changes everything. And it basically creates, for example, the IKEA project, where I can actually create a 10 times bigger microgrid compared to what currently would be allowed to be installed. And then IKEA can become carbon negative, not just carbon neutral from our technology.
Wait. And let me just say, so you're talking about the carbon part, but let me just go from the business case. So what you're effectively saying is something like in the IKEA installment, you're talking about them being carbon negative, but effectively that means they can also become an energy producer as well, which basically instead of energy being a cost center for the business, it actually can also become a revenue center. Is that what you're saying?
Effectively, the difference is because we also have to solve the split incentive. The power plant, the clean energy power plant, is owned by a super fund. So that super fund is getting a 20-year income. They're selling cheap energy to IKEA. IKEA is happy. Remember, they don't own the building. They don't know the whole thing about understanding how complex the market is. It's not just the energy market. Now you're also dealing with the complexities of the property market. So we've solved not just the technology, but we've also solved the business problem. So IKEA doesn't own the system. They get cheap, clean energy. So they're saving millions upon millions of dollars in energy costs over 20 years, and saving the greenhouse gases issue. And the excess energy is going backwards into the grid, creating a community benefit where the local businesses are using that excess energy. And then of course we have the decarbonization now is funded by, remember, we've got trillions and trillions of dollars of pension funds sitting there all over the world looking to invest in clean energy, and they can't do it because
Absolutely.
there's not enough solar farms in the world to do it. But so renewables in the local suburbs is 100 times bigger than any solar farms can ever be as a total market potential.
You think about this, what and said this is what sort of boggles my mind. If you think about industrial parks where, you've obviously got often lots of flat roofs, there's plenty of space for, obviously for solar panels and so forth. If you think about, to me, what goes through my head is that ability to capture energy on top of that, and then obviously to distribute it. Said you really are, changing the way in which sort of energy can be, I suppose, provided to I don't know, whether it be communities or to local areas. The other question I have for you is, how does that then, if that energy is being sent and let's say it's not being consumed, how is it then stored?
Ooh, I'm going to answer that. I'll go back to your statement and then I'll answer your question. So
Sure.
it's really important to say, in Australia, there's been a study done by the third, universities and the like, that if we filled every roof, every house and every business in Australia with solar, we can generate 130% or more of our total energy needs just from rooftop solar. Yes, we need storage, to go with it because we got to operate 24/7. But you go, wow, that's huge. We don't need any more coal or gas power stations. We don't even need any more solar farms or wind farms. It's scary when you actually say that. But then you go back to the fundamental problem that the grid's one way. The grid won't be able to accept, if we filled all the rooftops with solar, the grid was one way, and therefore you couldn't do it. Therefore, we've solved that problem to allow us to put more renewables on our rooftops. And it could be waste energy, it could be micro wind in the suburbs, and it could be batteries. And that's what we do. And then all of a sudden, and that's the cheapest form, because we have this trillions and trillions of dollars of investment in our local suburb poles and wires and distribution grids sitting there underutilized. So now all of a sudden we, as taxpayers, we effectively paid for all those poles and wires. We pay for them on our retail bills. It's like an underutilized asset. So we get to use that asset. So that's sort of, and that, so that's step one. Step two is then, in terms of storage, the future is we need cost-effective storage. And guess what? Our technology actually makes energy storage commercially viable today without any grant. So Steve, in general, almost every single battery that's been installed around the world has had a huge grant to make it work, to make it economically stack up. So the Tesla batteries at Hornsdale, we hear, you read about it if you read about Hornsdale, that way out in South Australia. That's a huge, massive grant. And then all of a sudden they're making lots of money, but they're making money because they got 50% of that was paid for by the taxpayer. Our IKEA project actually makes batteries, huge, massive batteries in the city, economically viable without a grant. So we can do two things. We can move, our technology moves the solar farm from out there in the sticks into the city, into the rooftops. And it also moves that Hornsdale battery from way out there into the city, but without a grant. So it becomes a commercially replicable and scalable business now, right? So that's why we've got people knocking on the door all over the place saying, hey, I want to build microgrids all over Australia and all over the world, because our technology facilitates both the solar and the battery becomes economically viable from day one.
Interesting. And those people knocking on your door, which countries are people knocking on your door from?
All over the globe. So so first off, we intend, or we are licensing our technology. So we're not intending to be the developer. So our whole business model is a sort of a software model. So we charge an upfront software fee for the initial build, and then we get a 20-year annual software fee. So it's a fantastic revenue model, but it's a win-win for us and the developer and the people in place. But it also then lets us license on a global scale. So we have master licensees in countries all over the world. So from the UK, the Middle East, Singapore, California, Hawaii, all looking in different scale, different levels of discussion, many at commercial contract stage to license our technology globally. And then we're also working with global players. Unfortunately, I can't name names, but big, billion-dollar companies who are working with us to develop a licensee arrangement with them. So in Australia, for example, they would be working with their current clients and applying our technology to current sort of sites or current projects. And then that sort of takes us down the contractual stage to turn that into a license agreement for Australia, and then a license agreement globally. So we're growing and changing and moving really fast to our original goal was to decarbonize the local suburbs, the local distribution grid very fast, and we're moving fast to achieve that.
And I got a message from you recently saying that I think it was the World Economic Forum. You will be speaking at that shortly. How did that come about?
Wow, we got invited to pitch at the World Economic Forum, or Davos as it's known, as at the Davos Forum in Switzerland. So we did that this week, and guess what? We won.
Congratulations.
So they created the Davos Energy Conference for 3 days. They invited a whole bunch of speakers, a whole bunch of different startups. We've got to present. I think we were selected, to present out of hundreds and hundreds of startups on a daily basis, and we won. So it really is a great honor to be recognized that our technology is on the verge of making a huge difference around the world by such a leading organization.
I agree. And do you know what the funny is? I know there'll be investors that are watching this and are thinking, how, as Australians, it's really funny. We give so much credit to technology from overseas. You mentioned about Tesla, you mentioned, and we give so much. And then you realize and said, I remember coming across you the first time, I think it's just, this is why I love what I do. I love the innovation that we get to see on a daily basis. And here you guys are, you've invested $16 million into technology that does have that it has the potential to change the entire energy market as we currently know it. And I sit there and I think, how are we not celebrating more sort of innovation, now this is obviously a whole different discussion, but it's like I said, this what makes me proud about what we do from a company perspective, but just from and this message is purely for investors. I would love you to give your vision for investors, because ultimately what you see happening in this energy market is ultimately, it creates investment opportunities for investors, right? To think about their own thesis in this space. So 10 years from now, how do you see this, I suppose, I don't know whether it be fight for the energy market or the utilization or how do you see energy, whether it be renewable energy or just how we consume or how commercial premises use energy? What do you see?
So at the moment, solar farms and wind farms is sort of trying to replace coal power stations and gas power stations. And it's still the big players doing that, right? It's still but renewables in the cities will be owned by so many different people. It will create the most new, what's the word for it? I guess I have to think for a second. It's the investment will be phenomenal. It's going to be trillions and trillions of dollars and create the biggest economic boom you've ever seen ever, right? So this is huge. You think of
Well,
replacing.
let's be blunt about it, right? You go onto the New York Stock Exchange, the largest companies, in fact, globally, some of the largest companies are all energy companies. And that's just the production of it, let alone the actual distribution of it.
If you think of the fact that you're replacing, every ounce of gas and coal with renewables within sort of 10 or 15 years, something that took 100 years to create. The amount of wealth we're going to create out of this. And so I'm talking, from an investor perspective. Well, wow,
yes,
this is huge. This is the space that you want to put your money into or invest into. And yes, you want to diversify and all this stuff, but like this is huge. So, and then solar farms, we know, for example, and wind farms are ready. Australia is showing that there's a massive issue in terms of curtailment. So in Australia, energy generated and is used in your suburbs first. So when you put your solar on your rooftop, it gets used first, and then it pushes out the solar farm energy. If you read about the solar farms and wind farms being curtailed, I'm trying to make it simple, not getting into technical, So if you just think of it,
that's how I need it, Richard. Nice and simple.
If you think of it like it's like a bucket of water, right? So the city's the bucket of water. I'm going to use the energy first, and remember, energy goes at the speed of light. So I use my any energy in the city that's generated is used in the city first, and then it pushes the solar farm or the wind farm or the coal power station out of the grid. So that's what's happening in Australia. I'm just trying to give you a different way of saying if you're reading you should be reading all the articles about energy and clean energy and renewables. If you're going to invest in the space, don't invest blindly, but there's tons of stuff. I'm just trying to give you a different of what's happening. So I don't know how to answer what you're saying. So the future is there's trillions of dollars going.
Well, I think you are. It's that they say you can, and you mentioned that there is literally trillions of dollars worth of infrastructure to provide the energy that we use today, right? Yes. And effectively, if you look at what you're doing, you're providing technology, right, to basically unlock that infrastructure on how it can actually use that renewable energy without the traditional, sort of use of coal, etc.
And then we actually do things. So a lot of life is about finding a sexy little hook that people understand. So we can actually when you install an EV fast charger. So if you want to plug your car in and get filled up within, say, 5 minutes, that is really, really expensive, because that little charger might be only 100,000, but then behind it, you've got to pay a lot of money to pay for grid upgrades. You have to put a huge battery in, and then it sits there, waiting for customers. So you might invest $500,000 in an EV fast charger, and Woolies goes, or Coles goes, well, I don't want to put $500,000 into my, I want to have 2 or 3 of them, and then how many? When will the customers come? So our model radically reduces the connection costs for EV fast chargers, absolutely almost totally eliminates the connection charges. When I put a microgrid into a Coles or a Woolies, I can actually almost add that EV fast charger for them for free almost. And then all of a sudden they get this huge green marketing for having an EV fast charger sitting there without them spending a penny, right? So it's a win-win that we're looking to develop in the next year with our key clients here and our key clients in the UK. Is basically the 2 markets we're working on at the moment, and then California and Singapore, where we can go to really high volume retail sites like IKEA, like Coles, like Woolies, like Sainsbury's, like Walmart, and effectively give them fantastic green marketing, and they don't have to pay a penny into capex. And it all stacks up. So the key is behind the scenes, it all stacks up, right?
Yeah. Now, look, obviously you're a passionate founder like I am. So I like how you sort of refer, sort of to your technology and what you built. But ultimately, what you've just highlighted is that it's the most logical direction for energy to go if you think about it. There has been so much money spent into infrastructure. There's obviously been a lot of money spent on how to actually get resources to fuel that infrastructure. And now technology cost has made it so that and also the technology that's been innovated by yourselves and also other innovators around, is that now that energy can be captured, it can be sent, it can be distributed. And to me, that's what makes this so exciting, because effectively, I love that technology can not only solve our problems, but along with that, you will create new business models, you'll create new opportunities. There'll be other different types of projects that we finance because of this. And this is fundamentally what sits at the core of innovation. So for investors, said, I find this area completely fascinating. I said, I love that I have a resource like Richard to come and chat to understand what this is about. I highly recommend everyone go and check out Planet Ark Power. I said, I've been working with Richard now for the last 2 to 3 years. To watch their growth has been astonishing. I know you've got a lot of sort of different corporate initiatives coming up shortly, which people will be learning about. I just want to say thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for your contribution as an innovator and as a founder.
And mutual to you. Thank you very much for yourself and Wholesale Investor. You've done fantastic to support this whole innovation sector. So congratulations back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.